Welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next. If you're not too careful, you just might learn something.
Hi there, and welcome to MacGyver's Workshop, where you never know what we're going to be working on next, and if you're not too careful, you just might learn something. So, in the next video in our series on that's Subaru Legacy GT. It's got the 2.5 boxer motor with a turbo on it, and we are going to tear it down and find out what's ailing it. It came in with a turbo that ate itself. The owner said, well, you know, let's try it. Put a turbo on it because it didn't look like there was any metal anywhere. You know, he is doing it on a budget, so we tried it. You know, here we are. So we're going to go ahead and tear this thing apart and see what we find and go through it and stab her back in there, hopefully, and get her going. Let's get started. Now, obviously, we're not going to be able to separate the crankcase with this thing on an engine stand, but what we will be able to do is to go ahead and get it torn down to just a bare block, you know, to get the heads off and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll yak her up on the workbench and separate the crankcase, see what's going on. Some little history on this. As I said before, it came in with a turbo that ate itself. Now, I believe really what happened, the root cause was not necessarily the turbo failing, but the oil pump failing. These things apparently have a nasty habit of the oil pump pressure regulator valve sticking wide open, and we have basically zero oil pressure. We don't believe that it damaged the crank or the mains or anything, or the rod bearings, but we'll find out for sure when we get it apart. But the main concern that has us tearing this thing down is that the engine had low compression and the head gaskets are seeping coolant. To start, we'll go ahead and get this plastic intake off of here and, you know, just kind of work our way down towards getting this thing stripped to its underwear, so to speak. And we'll just start taking this thing apart slowly but surely. Shift this puppy around just a little bit, be able to get at everything here. If my memory serves me correctly, he said this thing has, I believe it's like 180,000 miles, which is a good bit, really. But he said it run like a champ. So until it quit, we'll find out here. These hoses are really hardened up. So we'll be replacing just about all of these hoses here. The engine is very good in the sense that you can pull it out rather easily and disconnect the engine harness and get all your wiring out with just a couple of connectors. But you still have a menagerie of wiring on the motor itself. So everything plastic is about completely perished on this thing. Disconnect the coil packs here. Before I can get these hoses off, I got to get the wiring out of the way. So many sensors and switches and relays and God knows what else. Like I said, all this plastic is so brittle, just snapping every time you try and move something. So trying to be real careful with it. I'll take out the knock sensor wire there. That was the other thing I did. Put a knock sensor in here when we were Installing the new turbo. We're getting there, slow but sure. We get this engine harness out of the way. That's going to make things a lot less complicated. I love these crimp style hose clamps. Wow, this stuff's on there. And I say all these hoses, everything are just as brittle as can be. Not good. The injector harness off this side. And of course, you never want to forget your grounds. Those are very important, especially with all the computer controls. 12 millimeter headed bolts here. There's two of them, one right beside the other, which you would think is not very intuitive, but you know, they apparently did it for a reason. There's 4 separate ground wires coming together right here. So we have our plastic intake off. It's a lot more to it than you would think. We've still got a little ways to go yet. I was taking the air valves here. They have basically a flap valve on each side that restricts the amount of air going in at low RPM, and then when the you get the revs up into the higher RPM area, and these flaps will open up with this little motor here. It doesn't have an intake with like 2 separate sets of runners. It just has the big runners, and then it restricts, reduces the airflow kind of through its own little kind of like there's a plate here that goes all the way through, and you can see it on this side, whoops, where the at low RPM your airflow is only coming in through this little tiny slot right here, and as that will improve low end response and torque. But then of course once you throw the beans to it, then those flaps open up, and then you've got that those huge intake runners. Pretty neat little setup. Problem I'm having though is I've got one bolt here on the one on this side that's frozen in the head, and it's basically it's all corrosion is what it is. Like this would be one of the bolts, in a normal, what you would say looks normal. And here's one that has gotten corroded, and the remaining one that's in there is really bad corroded, and it's twisting. You can feel it twist. You got that kind of rubbery, really scary feel to it. And so I'm gonna leave that be for the moment and soak it with some penetrating oil, PB Blaster. And I got some up here and then some down here, hoping maybe some of it'll creep into the area there where it's got the corrosion. Maybe I'll get lucky. I don't want to break it if I can help it. Next thing we'll do here is we'll go ahead and remove the turbo and get that out of the way. Then we can start working on some of this other miscellaneous stuff, and I'll show you how to use a timing tool for the Subarus. When you buy the kit, they usually don't come with instructions on how to use them, which of course they are kind of sort of self-explanatory, but I'll show you anyway for the benefit of those not aware of how to use one. I'm going to remove the turbo here. Fairly straightforward. You got your 3 flange bolts here, a couple of hoses, and the oil feed line here, and then of course the oil return line underneath. Now I'm going to show you the tools that you'll use for working with the timing belt and cam gears. Now, in the original video, I went ahead and fabricated a tool to use to get us by, but ideally, if you own one of these vehicles and you're going to do your own timing belts on them, it's a good idea to have the tools. Now, the kit that I purchased covers all years turbo and non-turbo, so there's multiple, fixtures and items to use, but primarily you're going to have one like this, and I'll bring it up here and show you. Okay, this one actually fits the turbo and the non-turbo or VVT engines. This inner part fits one type of cam gear, and this outer fits I think the non-VVT intake cam. And basically how you would use this, now on this motor here, which has the intake variable valve timing, this inner portion here will be used for the exhaust cam, and it just fits this little spot right here, and that allows you to manipulate or hold the cam in position. For the VVT engines, you have this tool, okay, which has these three little dimples in here that go on the intake camshaft, and I'll kind of show you here how it goes on there. And you get it situated on there like that, and that allows you to do what you need to do with that there. And then some of your more complete kits will come with different crank tools, so for the harmonic balancer. Now, in any case, the one thing you need is one of these, which is a holding fixture for the timing marks. Now, the only one that is of any consequence is this side of the motor, because with it in time, the exhaust camshaft is under tension, spring tension, and if you were to take this belt off, this cam would spin and slam the valve shut, and without the proper tool you'd be playing hell trying to get the get the timing marks to line up and stay put while you're putting your putting your timing belt on. Now, I've got a picture that I took that I'll show close-ups of what we got here. For the purposes of what we have here, you've got two timing marks lined up here. You've got a timing mark here on the timing cover, and you've got another timing mark here on this timing cover, and then you got timing marks here. Now, additionally, there's timing marks off to the left side of this gear and the right side of this gear. And what that's for is your better quality timing belts will have little white lines on the belt, so that if you line those little white lines up with this mark, this mark, this mark, and that mark, the engine will be in time. So, and I think there's also one here for the crankshaft timing mark. So that's how that works. Now, what we got to do, we have to take our little VVT cover thing off of here so we can get to the bolt on the inside. And I'll show you how this holding fixture works to hold the timing gears in place. Now, your fixture has a little Allen head like a Allen key type configuration on it. And what it does is it goes into these socket head bolts. Now, your better ones, your better kits, will have a little neo magnet in the end there just to hold it in place, and then it has a 3/4 inch hex here, and then it has a bolt here, and of course, you know, they'll spin until you have them, you know, locked in place. And then you'll notice also that one goes in deeper than the other, and that's because the exhaust cam sits in further than the one here with the variable valve timing. Now, if you're working on a motor that doesn't have variable valve timing, you can just, if I can be not so clumsy, take this little bushing out, and that will set them, you know, to the same height for a non-VVT engine. And this one goes in there like that. The magnets hold it in place. And then we hold it with a 3/4 inch on one side and a 5/8 on the other. And without turning our camshaft, this will hold the timing gears into place while we are working with the motor and taking our timing belt off. Now that we've got our engine locked into position, we're at top dead center on cylinder number 1, we can safely remove our timing belt. Not really have to worry about too much. Now, I'm just kind of going through this to show you as an example. It doesn't really matter because I'm pulling the heads off and all that, but you'll get an idea as to how this thing is how this tool is supposed to work. Now, the other thing you're going to need to do is when we get this tensioner out of here, we will need to compress it and lock it with a pin there. Typically, I'll use like a little skinny drill bit. If you try and compress this, I don't recommend you trying to do that with, you know, this bolt here or anything like that. Then you're probably good off to kind of do it like so, but do it gently. You know, it's not going to just squeeze in there like a spring. It's going to have a lot of resistance to it. So just be gentle with it and just apply consistent pressure to very, very gradually compress that tensioner until you get it where it needs to be, and it has to go all the way through to the other side. You'll notice that your belt is loose enough to remove from the engine. Then at that point, you can remove some of your idlers or whatever to safely give you, a little extra slack here. You can take that idler out of there, whiz that right on out of there like so. That takes that idler off of there. Now you got plenty of slack there to get your timing belt out of there. Now this is a brand new timing belt. We can reuse it, but the timing belt has a bunch of miles on it. I wouldn't suggest reusing it. You're better off just spending the money and getting you a new timing belt set. And the better kits will come with, new idlers and, water pump and all that good stuff. So we've got everything pretty much stripped off of here. Our timing gears off, our inner timing belt covers. Still working on this. We're just going to keep it soaked with good quality penetrating oil here in the hopes that maybe we can get it freed up. I don't know how lucky we're going to be about it. Otherwise, we're just going to have to let it break and extract it, but not going to be for not trying. So now the next nightmare we're going to have to deal with is when we take the exhaust manifold and catalytic converters off of here. We have to get these heat shields off. Typically they're just all going to break, the bolts. We're going to try and get them to take and wire brush the back side of ones that we can see so that they're clean, and go to back them out. We're not trying to pull rust through the threads. Let's keep our fingers crossed and do the best we can rather than just go in there and ham fist and bust them all off. And I mean, technically these heat shields are in really bad shape. They're rusted out around the manifold and cats in a lot of places, and chances are they're going to buzz and rattle when you put them back on. I want to keep everything as it is as much as possible. Anyway, we're going to flip this thing over and start working on the flip side here. And the other thing too is this O2 sensor is not wanting to come out. It's going to be a challenge, so we'll give it a whirl and see how we do here. All right, now we've got the exhaust pipes off of here, and we'll go ahead and flip it back around here, and let's work on getting the heads off here. I've left the oil pan and this filter on here just to keep debris out of everything. I mean, we will be taking those off, obviously, but for the time being, they can stay put. Get our valve cover off of here. Okay. Let's see here. I guess that one's a wee bit snug, isn't it? It's all right. Well, looks like that one's going to give us a bit of fit, isn't it? Okay. I guess we'll be back in a minute. This is a classic example of what corrosion can do. And this one valve cover bolt was seized into the valve cover due to corrosion. And in a combination with a air chisel and driving a 3/8 12-point socket on there, once we got it broken loose with the chisel, only then were we able to get it out. But I'll show you what this corrosion does. You know, it can be choosy. You know, all these other valve cover bolts were in perfect condition, and it's just a matter of this one that got some corrosion in it. That's a normal one. And this one, for some reason, had corrosion built up in it. And you've got this big, long shoulder here. And, you know, the thing might as well be welded into the case or the head. I'm gonna take a picture of my phone here of what the inside of this valve cover looks like. I'll pop that up so you can see it. And yeah, I mean, any of that can make your afternoon project into a week-long nightmare. In this case, we got lucky, so. But I want to get this head off of here so we can see what's going on in here on this one. This was the side I believe that had the low compression in it. So the next thing we're going to have to do here is take our cam caps off of here, get the camshafts out. If you recall, I had mentioned that the oil pump pressure regulator valve had stuck open, as is apparently a common thing with these motors. The main concern you would have, of course, is oil starvation. If it ran without oil enough to launch the turbo, then, what else would have happened? So I am smelling a little bit of heat. And what I mean by that is if you have an engine that has overheated at some point in its life, significantly, like boiled over forever, unless you take the motor completely apart and have it dipped and boiled out, you will always be able to smell a funky smell where it's overheated. And I'm getting a little bit of that from inside here. Not much. I'm not seeing anything scary. So, but I'm going to take my phone out here and show you the best evidence if you have any damage from oil starvation is going to be in the cam bearings in these heads, because that's pretty much the furthest from the oil pump that you can get. Let me just shoot a little bit of video here, and we'll get you a close-up of all the cam bearing surfaces. And you can see, so, it looks okay. By all means, I've seen a lot worse. This actually looks pretty good. So, I'm not seeing any, there's a little bit of scuffing in there. That's just pretty much, that's not really scuffing there, I don't think. But, of course, we're going to send these heads off to the machine shop anyway. In my opinion, that doesn't look terrible. So now we're going to get we're going to undo the head bolts and get the head off. And for that, you're going to need a 14 millimeter 12-point socket, meaning that you got 12 little bitty, let's see if I can get this thing to focus, 12 sides in there. The head of the bolt has the, 12 points on it. So you can't like cheat and use a 6-point or anything like that. And of course you're going to need a breaker bar. So there's only 6 head bolts. We're going to start in the middle and work our way around, get it loose as evenly as possible. And hope that none of these are corroded. Imagine these bolts have a ton of torque on them. And you're looking at the moment of truth here. All right. Let's see if it'll come off easy or if it's going to be difficult. Nope. Not bad. There's a lot of shit in that cylinder, though. I'll get us a close-up view of it. All right, so let's have a look up close here. Now, the good news is that there's no evidence of collision with the valves. Otherwise, you'd see little shiny spots in those valve reliefs there. That would be a concern is if we were worried about maybe not having the cam timing right when you're changing the timing belt, that sort of thing. So that's a good sign there. We don't have to worry about having any bent valves or anything. But there is an inordinate amount of carbon and buildup and crap in the cylinders. Now, the other good thing is it looks like there's still plenty of crosshatch on the cylinder bores. Not sure. You know, these boxer engines, you know, they'll wear out the bottom and the tops of the cylinders because, you know, just gravity. But I'm seeing good crosshatch there. That's a really good sign. And let's look at this head gasket, because we had a lot of, I was noticing some coolant seepage out of the bottom here. So pull this off and flip it over, and that, come on, focus. Let me just hang this on here upside down, and see, I'm guessing we just had us a little bit of seepage coming around through there maybe. But it's not uncommon with these engines to have, you know, some seepage, but you know, all in all, it doesn't look terrible. So now let's have a look at the cylinder head. I'm just going to throw that back on here temporarily. I need to be careful because I don't want all the buckets, you know, falling off the valves on the other side. Definitely looks like, you know, maybe some oil intrusion in there, like maybe valve guides or valve stem seals. And yeah. So now the next thing we're going to do, we still really need to determine why we lost compression. I'm going to set the cylinder head over on my little table I got set up over there, and we're going to pour some you know, penetrating oil in the ports and see if it seeps out through the valves with all the valves closed. Okay, so what we're going to do here is we're going to fill each port up with some WD-40. And I don't have to put a whole lot in there, but, and I'm just using WD-40 because it's convenient and easy to use. And we'll see if we get anything running out of these valves. See if they're sealing correctly. All right, it's been a few minutes. Let's have a look at the head here underneath and see if we've lost any of our WD-40 there. And I'm going to say that's a big rut row, because what's been happening is where the valves don't seal properly, the you know, the WD-40 will seep out. Now, I imagine you could get away with a little bit of seepage or whatever, but you know, at this point, of course, you know, this thing's due for a valve job. And I'm going to gather that the other head's about the same, and so we're going to go ahead and get the rest of this motor torn down and get it ready for him to go ahead and take off to the machine shop. So I'm going to end this video right here, because the next step, which is going to be separating the crankcase and getting the pistons out and all that, is going to be pretty much a video unto itself. Plus, I have to get the you know, the workbench cleared and all, so I have a nice clean surface to do this on, and reset the cameras and all that sort of thing. So, like I said, we'll end it here. Stay tuned. We appreciate you watching. And of course, please subscribe and click the like button and hit the notification bell icon if you would like to be notified when we post a new video. So you can reach me offline at MacGyversWorkshop@gmail.com. And you can check us out on our website, www.MacGyversWorkshop.net. So thanks again, and stay tuned.